All right, it's time for another countdown to classic call, and we started talking yesterday about the race to world first and the raids in general in Cataclysm, but we didn't go that deep in the weeds. So I figured we'd actually go a little bit more intricately on the race to world first and what actually happened. I mean, I was just laughing with one of the guests you're about to hear before we hit the record button about, for a guy who semi-professionally covers World of Warcraft, it is comical how little I know at times about what's happening in the news. And I typically don't really follow race to world first and whatnot because I'm not involved in that scene, but it's not like I don't care. So another guest on that you're about to hear from reached out to me and said, "Hey Josh, if you want to hear from a raider who was balls deep in the thick of things of this race to world first, your boy's a skilled raider and was there and has tales to tell." And I said, "All right, baby, let's do it." And then our other guest said the same thing and said, "I was there." And I said, "You know what? We're so fortunate on Countdown to Classic to have these quality guests who not only know the game, but are right there in the thick of it doing the high octane stuff. Let's get them on the show." I'll introduce our first guest, Jugs, mate. It is an absolute pleasure to have you here for the first time.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Mate, wonderful to have you. Thanks so much for reaching out and sort of stirring my intrigue in this discussion. And then our second guest is no stranger to the show. However, it might surprise some of you that he's mentioned over the last 18 months or so this ragtag group of raiders that he was going to whip into shape and turn into a fearsome fighting force. And I think we probably all collectively humored him and scoffed a little bit at that notion, and yet here he is achieving results in Cataclysm. North, mate, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing really, really, really well. I want to preface some things by saying this race, of all of the ones that Polar has been involved in, I was involved in almost none of it. Compared to the other ones, I took a step back from the game as Cataclysm preparation started to focus on some stuff in real life.
Mm-hmm.
I only helped them for the PTR sessions that came around with, like aura creation, some strat work, log review, stuff like that. Like I came back in a limited sort of advisor sort of position to help them out with it, but I had some insight, so I wanted to share the insight. I was not raiding and I was not in the race itself. I was helping summon and organizing the clear team of the trash for the second run.
Mm-hmm.
But that basically ran itself as well. So I did precious little. I cannot take even a small amount of credit for the work that they did in this race. But that is the ragtag group. That is the raid that Team Uggsy and I slaved over trying to make really, really, really solid for the better part of 2 years. And right now is when they're getting the results. So my hats off to the entire officer corps. They really, really stepped it up. I think they have the best leadership in NA. I was a really big part of forming that, and I still help them out. So I have my own bias towards it, but they're fantastic. Tim particularly, he is fantastic. He's a great leader. They have a great group of guys.
Well,
it's really strong. It's great to see.
So many questions already, but yeah, well, there you go. If you've become like the Mickey of Polar, then so be it. They need a guy in the corner, you know what I mean? Mending those cuts between rounds and whatnot, and giving them the bit of help with encouraging words. But mate, yeah,
I was there filling as well when they needed it. It's a long PTR weekend. Everyone can kind of speak to this. It is tough when you're doing those sessions where you're doing like 10 to 12 hour days. Having a person every slot will be available. So I'm gonna have my 85 priest ready for the next PTR session when they're gonna give us the templates, etc. Just to fill in the gaps for them. But I'm not making the strats with them. I'm not in every raid. I'm not doing all the things like I was before.
Right. But this is, as you say, this is the ragtag group that you were bitching and moaning about 18 months ago that you've built up from nothing.
Yeah,
right?
I don't know if any single person, when I started, I remember when I first talked about the guild, it was a little bit after I was convinced to join. I don't know if there's a single, from that conversation to this, the number of people that are the same, it might be in the current raid from that raid to the raid that just cleared this. I think it's one guy. I think it's the GM.
All right.
I think that's it.
Funny that all the guys that you were bitching about may have left over the time, but I don't know.
Pruned, we like to say.
Weeded them
You have
out.
to be careful about where
I
the
see.
branches are allowed to
Now, look, for a bit of context
grow.
for all you listeners at home, as North is saying, he is a part of Team Polar. They came third. The race was won by Progress. We mentioned that in the call yesterday. Newman came second, Polar third, Who fourth. And our other guest, Jugs, is a part of the team that came fifth, Variable. And now, Jugs, your story with Variable, I find really interesting because you were saying that, this is not a long time established guild. This is a new guild that's just had people thrown together from all corners for this race. I think it's fucking phenomenal that you came fifth, like knowing that with the limited time that you've had together. Just to focus on how short a time you guys have had together, how was the race for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, it was good. Like I said, our kind of main core has really only been together for maybe like 5 months max, as like a collective group. It's been pretty small. We kind of started out with Cata Prep in a pretty small capacity of um, a mix of balancing recruitment of who we want to kind of build the team out, and then like doing some of the prep work with maybe like kind of like a 10-man team on some servers. But really coming together in the last few months as kind of a big 25-man group or more. I mean, obviously there's additional folks, so it has been kind of an adventure, I guess, in that sense, with the kind of a ragtag bunch. We have people from a whole bunch of different NA guilds that kind of have come together. Either those guilds didn't continue into Kata, or they just left those guilds to join us to see if we can make a dent. So like I said, expectations wise, we wanted to be pretty clear in tampering having too large of expectations. We wanted to push as hard as we could. Thought we had a pretty good chance to do pretty well, but with the realization that we are a brand new guild, a new group of people, it takes time to get that cohesion of people playing together. So we kind of went into Kata with T11 being, let's just do the best we can, but let's really push for making a big splash in T12. So that's really where our goal is for when Firelands comes out. But overall, we had some slips in the race that cost us time. But I think for the officer core, we're pretty happy with how it kind of shook out.
Very good, mate. I'll keep you rolling and I'll get North to piggyback off of your answer. Just one sort of more generalized question before we get into the specifics of the race and all the boss encounters and the strats that you and your guilds employed. Just recruitment-wise, you said something there that piqued my interest, Jugs. With the transition over to Cataclysm, I only just discovered over the last 24 hours, because, again, it's laughable how little I know about this stuff at times, but I only just found out that, Nota wasn't in the race, because I said to someone like, oh, how did Nota go? And they go, Josh, they weren't even in the race. They're a SOD-focused guild now. And I'm like, oh, okay. And it got me thinking that, they said that some of their more Kata-enthused members of Nota, found other guilds to roll with in this race in Kata. And I was thinking, in general, there must, among the more elite raiders of the world, have been, the same kind of division that we see amongst regular players as well, where a lot of people might not have had much interest in moving on from Wrath to Kata. And so they've maybe gone off to play one of the other 5,000 versions of WoW that are available at the moment. So has it been, Jugs, I'll start with you. Has it been a really noticeable time for recruitment with higher octane guilds? Like, have you found it easier to pull skilled players in, or is it like, I just imagine it would be a very different landscape given that like Kata's almost been like a reset button.
Yeah, it's been especially on the NA side, it's been something that's kind of interesting, of like feeling like everybody has to gravitate towards kind of the more mega servers. Like if you're on some of the smaller servers, recruitment is rough. So you'll see a lot of people from, White Mane or Man Crick or these other servers, like all pretty much have to gravitate towards, Faralina, just for the talent pool. There's a lot of people that quit. There's been, I'm sure, North has probably had similar story with Polar. There's a lot of people that you were talking to, maybe interested in playing, and some people are on the fence of like, I don't really know if I want to play Kata. Like, may just start out casually, see how it goes. There's kind of a bit of wish-washiness there. I know for us specifically, because we're basically debuting in T11. All of our recruitment was basically like word of mouth from people that we already had on, or people that could vouch for other folks. We didn't really have like large scale open recruitment, nor did people really know about us yet. So it was a bit difficult in that sense. And we were hoping, after T11, maybe with a little bit more exposure, we could start expanding our recruitment. But yeah, it was kind of a, take what you have, work with it. Not saying, all of our team is great, but that very much our kind of recruitment was very much kind of word of mouth, homegrown in that sense.
North, I'll throw it over to you to keep rolling on this one, and then we'll get to the fun question I want to ask afterwards. But as I sort of tongue-in-cheek say, as the proverbial Mickey of Polar, I'm sure you were quite involved in some form of recruitment over the last few months. Did Kata feel different recruitment-wise, or was it harder or easier, or what was the general feel of the landscape for you going into this race in terms of building the team?
So I can speak to the recruitment up until essentially it was right as I was taking my sort of leave when the team really coalesced that currently, did really, really well for Polar. A couple of those people came afterwards, but largely they came from the same source. I think with NA, it really, Jugs is right. Word of mouth really, really important. Every NA guild has an uphill battle of cutting the dipshits from the roster, and the dipshits are aplenty, and good, thoughtful, intelligent, selfless raiders are extremely hard to find anywhere. And so it's always difficult. It is always difficult. We didn't notice it was especially difficult for Kata. It got easier tier to tier for us simply because we're not suffering from the same thing the variable is. More people knew who we were. I think people probably finally now know who we are because of that third, because it's it's on the front page. It's there. We were at one point, we were in the lead, right? We were beating Progress at one point. That when Magma, they killed Omnitron before we killed Magma, but they had some difficulty on Magma, or one of the two. It might be vice versa. But at that point, we killed Omnitron before they killed the second boss at the start. So we were, 4 bosses away before they were 4 bosses away. We killed Atramedes as they killed Chimeron, which is a much longer boss. Until the wipe at Maloriak, it was actually in the lead. And I think the people who were watching really they knew that. A lot of the stream responses that you see were like, oh my God, like, who is this NA guild? Like, they're randomly doing well. And I actually think that the NA guilds did really, really, really well this time in a row. It was nice seeing who in variable immediately after. It was good seeing so much NA performance on this, because I don't think we've ever seen that in a tier actually ever before.
So as you're saying, NA and Polar, who and variable coming in at 3, 4, and 5, and EU taking the 1 and 2 slots. Notably, even though I say notably, but we all know kind of generally what the server environment is these days. It shouldn't be particularly shocking when I say that the 3, 4, and 5 slots, all of you guys are playing on Fealina together. So the question that popped up in my head is, I know Fealina is a big server and all that, but you guys must have bumped into each other. You must somewhat know of each other. And North's given me the green light to bring this up in phrasing this question. When I say, hey, North, did you guys know of Variable? Was there a light amount of tension between you as an individual and some members of Variable North?
Krendor does not like me.
Krendor?
Yes.
Is Krendor part of Variable?
Krendor's the GM of Variable.
Are you fucking serious?
Well, we don't really have a GM. We have 3 core officers, myself, Krendor, and Krunk.
I didn't realize this sounds like a silly thing to say. I mean, obviously I know of Krendor and I've seen his stuff, but I had no concept that he was even remotely close to a high-profile raider.
Well, I think some people confuse him with the WoW Crendor like
Oh,
creator.
wait, sorry.
No,
Different people are we thinking
it's
of?
not the content creator. It's
Oh,
just
my bad.
he was a P server raider. He raided with Overclock a little bit. And he and I had I tried to poach him from Overclock in the ICC, in the work up to the ICC, because they were performing worse on PTR than we were, because they're having a problem with their main tank on Lich King. They eventually fixed it, and they performed better than us that tier, and we kind of dropped the ball, realistically speaking. I think. But he took me trying to poach him very negatively. He was upsetting.
Well, where's the beef,
some,
mate? Is there anything we can we bury any hatchets today, or is the flame alive?
I don't have any animosity to Jugs at all. I'm gonna be honest, I don't know Jugs that well. He seems perfectly pleasant. He seems like a nice guy. I think that they did really well. I think they did really well, especially given you're right, they haven't been around at all. Like this was my understanding of it, and I could be wrong, is that Variable was put together when Overclock collapsed in ICC by Crendor. I could be wrong in that though, but that was my understanding of how the guild came to be. And so that is an incredible turnover for that amount of time. I thought you guys were gonna be I thought you guys were gonna be right on the tail, to be honest. I thought your performance would have been better. I wasn't expecting to see this many wipes, actually.
Yeah. Like I mentioned, like we had a little bit of sloppy play that definitely hurt us with the multiple wipes.
Was it like jitters? Was it was it just first time performance? Was it just people just fucking up? Was it just like one guy just running it down?
Jugs, I apologize. He's the king of the backhanded compliment.
I'm not. They did really well.
No, I think it's a combination of things. It's just a combination of misplays and maybe a little bit of greediness, but
okay.
Things to iron out. But like you said, yeah, I mean, Crendor and Krunk, they know each other back from like TBC and earlier, back when they raided on Mankrik in a guild called Beers.
They were from
Crendor
Beers. That's crazy.
Yeah, Crendor went to Overclock. Krunk has been around. I think they moved to Space Forest, then to Get Carried with a couple group of people. So it was just a combination of, I kind of knew from hearing about it that Krunk was planning on doing a Cata thing and Crendor, so like I got involved. So it was kind of a group of all of these people that a lot of them have played together in some form, from either back in TBC or throughout Wrath, or have gone to different guilds. But yeah, that's why Variable has a combination of people from Beers, Overclock, Insanity, Get Carried, like kind of a ragtag group of folks.
Jugs is too classy for you, North. He's not going to meet you in the mud. All right. So
I'm not. Wait, I'm not in the mud. I'm
I love how you tell these stories, though. You tell these stories, and it's like you're like a fly to shit. I'm like, how do you manage to get everyone on the server to hate you?
That's the thing. Who realistically, my impression was as well. Who should not have won against Variable, but who had their best run ever by like a really large margin. And Variable I think Variable had one of their worst runs through the circuit. I don't imagine that was their best performance at all.
We definitely had like cleaner runs on the PTR sessions for sure.
All right.
I mean, we were also
Polar's run looked about how Polar's runs looked, right? Like that wasn't especially a good performance. It wasn't especially bad. We had better ones. We had worse ones, right? Like it wasn't crazy either way. Okay. The Norak wipe was unfortunate though. That really sucked. That did really suck. That was just a bad push timer. I'm not sure how that happened, honestly. Like in retrospect, I don't really understand how it happened, but shit happens, I guess.
At least you guys were fortunate enough to not start Magma in your race.
Why start Magma? on like I feel why not start Throne? I feel like
now's the
you have
time.
to start
Now's the
Throne.
time to get into it. So you raised this before we started recording, Jugs, and said, you know, you started to get into there was a big difference between you guys and other guilds, a choice that you made that may or may not have been your undoing, and North has just raised that. Talk us through it and the decision.
Yeah, our original plan was BWD to bot and then Throne last. But I believe I'm actually not sure who started, but I believe the top 3 all started Throne and did like reverse order pretty much.
Yeah. So just to
Newman
let people
started
know,
Newman did not start Throne. Newman started Magma. Realistically speaking, if you look at the run and you look at what they lost time on and you look at how well that they did, I believe that they were wipeless other than bugs.
oh, okay.
I think that
So
they
Newman
deserve
did
one there.
what
Newman started
variable.
Magma. They wiped to that thing, and they still were second, and they beat us because of the Maloriak wipe. But if you go there and you match up the time that they lost there versus the time that we lost in Maloriak, soundedly ahead, right? Like
All right.
they would be significantly ahead. I believe the same exact thing is true. Progress, the gap's a little bit bigger. Obviously, it was like a minute or like less than a minute between second and third. Progress was a few minutes before. I think that it does make up those few minutes. I think
Well,
Newman did perform the best out of any guild.
let me ask you, as maybe an
I
outside
saw that
critic.
too, yeah.
Let me ask you, as maybe an outside critic whose guild did the opposite North. So as Jugs has been saying, Progress and maybe the majority of the guilds went Conclave of Wind into Alakir, into Halius, and BWD or
I
whatever.
think it was just Polar and Progress.
Okay,
It was
okay.
just Polar and Progress, and then even maybe in the top 10, even there could be another one, but of the top 3 and of the top 5, it was only us that started Throne.
Oh, okay.
But I'm not sure why.
Well-
I'm not sure why you wouldn't start Throne. Like why start anywhere else?
Well, that's what I mean. Talk us through the distinction between these two choices, because that's what Progress did. You sort of questioning variable for going why Magmore first, but you said other people tried it as well, including.
I don't understand why any of them did that. I don't know why Newman did it. Like that is the thing that lost him the race, and there's no point. It is objectively worse.
All right, well,
It is
maybe throw it to
objectively
you,
a worse
Jugs.
decision.
What was the thinking in we think there's a strat here to go Magmore first?
I think part of it was we kind of felt like Throne was maybe our weaker run, so we were trying to order them in. Okay, which ones can we potentially have more gear going into?
Wait, what?
So that was primarily one of the reasons.
What boss are you weak on there? Alakir? God forbid.
Yeah, we struggled a little bit on Alakir.
It must have been P2. Was it just like managing the sparks or damage for the sparks? Were you just staying P2 for too long, or?
No, it was a combination, I guess, of like P1 and P2. Less so P1, but yeah, maybe spark management and just getting through. We just wanted to make sure that we had enough, had the most.
You just had
gear
issues with it
possible.
being clean. No, that makes sense. There's a lot that can go on in that fight. No, that's
so we
fair.
felt most confident starting BWD into bot and then Throne.
Our reasoning was mostly the same. Obviously, the trash stuff comes into it, and this is the reason why I say it kind of is objective. Like, you should go Throne first because there's no trash there. You could go bot first. You could go bot first. It doesn't matter if you go bot and then Throne, and then Descent. But you want to go Descent last, because you want the trash not to be there. So.
All right. Guys, I might bring this up now. I was going to bring it up later, but I'll say it while he's awake in case he wants to add to it. So I wasn't aware of this. You guys will know more about it, but just to focus in on who won and maybe that tight race between Newman and Progress for, the number 1 slot. And I believe there was about 4.5 minutes in the end that separated the two. Arcos is obviously a very keen watcher of these races, and he's said the following thing that's piqued my interest, because he's saying Newman would have gotten world first if the boss wasn't bugged. And you might sort of say, well, what the fuck do you mean by that? But if you're watching, he said, let me read out this whole message. He goes, make sure you ask North and Jugs this. Do talk to the guys. Well, let me read the full message. Sorry. Here we go. North, listen up. Hi, Josh. Long-time listener. My name is Arcos and I have a tiny penis. Please do ask the guys about the time that Polar and Newman lost because the boss they started on was bugged. To my very brief research, it looked like I presume he means wasted time, somewhere between 8 to 15 minutes because they tried a boss while bugged. Arcos, you're all over the place in this message. They went and cleared other bosses and then went back thinking the boss was fixed, but it wasn't. And then they're all on the last boss at the same time, Progress, Newman, and Polar, and Progress bested them by 5 minutes eventually. It was a fun race to watch and more competitive than expected, but it sucks that it could have been down to seconds if that boss wasn't bugged and or fixed quicker. P.S. I have never pleasured another human being in my life. I don't know why he adds all those personal things, but North, do you know what he's talking about in terms of the bugs?
Yeah, so Magma was unkillable on launch, and so the people who started with Magma could not touch it, right? And so they were forced behind. We didn't have this issue, but obviously every build that started there, it was I believe it's the ranged mechanic that is meant to fire if you don't have enough people in ranged, was just firing over and over again. And so it would instantly kill the entire raid after a couple volleys. Was actually just unkillable. Nothing you could do about it. It was fixed. I believe an hour and a half, or it's not an hour and a half, maybe like 30 minutes into the raid, it was fixed. Something like that is when I heard it was as we got to it that it was getting fixed. So I think it was fixed maybe 10 minutes before we got to it. Which is unfortunate. You could have only if you had started in BWD, which Newman did, you objectively lost. I believe it was 8 minutes. I don't know if they had any other wipes though. They might have had other wipes. I heard they had a third wipe, but I don't actually know if that's true. I think that might be untrue. So I'm gonna go look that quickly. All wipes 4, 2 on Magma. And then it's counting one that doesn't actually exist. So there is a third wipe. I'm not sure what the third wipe is on. It's on Ascendant Council. So they just did wipe to Ascendant Council.
Were people losing their mind over this at the time?
Yeah, no, people were really mad.
Is this?
I know.
John's probably speak to it. Yeah,
Yeah, like I mentioned it before North joined. Like it definitely. I mean, it is a situation where you got to just like deal with it and adapt, right? But at the same time, everybody's rearing, ready to go, and it is kind of a cuts the wind out of your sails when you're just like, well, what the hell? And everybody's just kind of have a gut punch in that point of view, and then you have to move on to do something else. Like, what are you gonna do? So I know for us, like we're like, all right, well, let's go kill Omnitron, and then we did that, and then we're like, all right, well, do we leave now? Do we do one more poll on Magma and see if they just happen to fix it pretty quickly? So we did send another poll on Magma, and it was still not fixed. So that's when we decided to go to bot. But yeah, I mean, it's frustrating. I noticed, I don't know if anybody else noticed this, but at least when we were on Cho'Gall, it seemed like there was a fix to the Shadow Crash visuals of where they're landing mid-fight. So for like our first pull or midway through or something, you'd have the Shadow Crashes, but there would be no visual on where they're landing. But then like midway through the fight, there just suddenly was them appearing on the ground, which is nice.
Part of the privilege that I got from just helping them with summons, because I wasn't there, like in the ICC race, I was 26 manning. I was calling everything for them. I was not doing that this time because I took that break off. I was, telling the, talking to the people at Blizzard as best that I could to try and get those things fixed as they occurred, because I was pretty extensively testing in the PTR and submitting to the GitHub and talking with them to try and help them out as best as I could, because the PTR was, the bosses were from the beginning very solid, but there were quite a few like small things that I think that everyone really noticed. That a lot of the reticles were missing for so the Shadow Crash ability was missing from Atramedes on the first one. It was missing from every single one. The Halfus one was missing as well. So all of them were, I'd
actually submitted a list of bugs for those on the PTR.
Yeah.
How long ago was
that?
Yeah,
and they had fixed pretty much everything.
It was a while ago.
It was pretty much everything was done, but a few of the bugs that remained were like one of them was the Shadow Crash on Cho'Gall. So that's funny that you were in the middle of it while that happened, because right as I encountered it, because I was just sitting there and I was just doing logistics, I was in a downtime, and so I just was like, hey, still not working on that one, and they looked at it and they almost immediately fixed it as soon as they had time to fix the Magma thing.
So North,
So they were working there very, very, very quickly.
having said all that, North, if I can, I don't know how to say this. If I can ask you to just dive a little bit deeper into this one, because I think it is fair to say, the community has been rather critical of the development attention that Cataclysm has gotten to date through the beta, through the pre-patch, and even upon launch. Despite, like we say, a number of things have been fixed, the general state has still fallen under pretty harsh criticism, much of which I have said publicly that I feel is quite justified, that I think even the team has very slightly maybe said as well that they get it. Like, they are spread a bit thin. They're trying as hard as they can, but things are, they're getting to it when they can, I guess you could say. But, and North, I don't want to put you in too hard of a position here, but I feel like you might be able to summarize this well, because it is a shame to hear. I didn't know about this. It is a really big shame to hear that such a phenomenal race to world first, and just because race to world first isn't a big part of my world doesn't mean it's not a big part of other people's worlds. A lot of World of Warcraft gamers adore this kind of event, and to have such a great tight race, to hear that it got tripped up by some bugs is really unfortunate. Now, a lot of people would say, oh, Josh, it's hardly the first time. A lot of these races do unfortunately wind up bumping into technical issues. Game development is hard, yada, yada, yada. However, slightly different in the Cataclysm Classic argument, because it's a game that's been out before, as opposed to new raid content in retail coming out and shit hitting the fan and it all falling apart or whatever. What's a fair way in your mind, North, to comment on yet another bug popping up and, unfortunately, like Jugs has said, taking a bit of the wind out of the sails of this race?
Yeah, it's unfortunate. That bug specifically, I never saw on the
No,
on the
there was a
PTR at
different
all.
bug on
There was a
PTR.
different bug
I don't know if you
on
guys had
Magma
that with
they fixed.
Magma.
Yeah,
Where
no,
when you took the head down, instead of it coming down over the spike, it flipped backwards over
it did
the
the
Magma.
back bend,
And then it was like LOS, you couldn't do anything. And
yeah, I think that bug, I think people still did trigger it, and so there is the game development hard. They have to do this. That was a new bug that just popped up. It's really hard for them to interfere with it. I think that we got the best case scenario in that critical failure, where it was fixed relatively quickly, and there were other paths you could go. It wasn't okay, this is the only play. Imagine if it happens on Gatekeeper in Firelands, right? Nothing you can do. Nothing you can do. You're just sitting there, everyone's just AFK. It does feel really bad for those people, though, because Newman essentially, their first was, if you account for how much time they lost on Magma, I don't know how close it would have been or not would have been, because I'm looking, there also wasn't a Senate Council wipe. So they didn't have the only deathless run. Every single run in the top 3 had a wipe, and had one of them not had that wipe, they would have easily been in first, I'm pretty sure. Right? So the Polar, I believe, takes that race if they do not wipe on Maloriak. Progress cannot be encroached upon by Polar if they don't wipe on a Senate Council. Right? So that was, and this is the first race we see where the top 3 have all wiped. So I think the content's in a great place. The bugs do suck. They need more people. They know that, though. They know that. They've said that the content schedule is too fast. You can see the same thing happening in retail right now.
And the jobs are popping up. They are trying to hire.
And the jobs are popping up, and we've seen that. You and I check them, right? Like, I know how infrequently that they are given permission to expand the team, and here they are expanding the team quite. Last time it was 1 position. This time it's 3. Right, so it obviously, it's a hard thing to get people on board for. It's a hard process to be part of. It's a very like team oriented thing, and everyone kind of has to know where the the gears fit in various slots, and everyone has to be on a similar enough page. There has to be good communication, all these things in a very, very complicated system across a zillion different versions of WoW. So obviously, it's hard. They need more people. They need more people. It seems very, very clear to me that the people that they have are not. It's not that the people that they have suck. That is such a cop out. If even if it were true, it would be kind of a cop out. The people that they have do not suck. They just have a really, really tight schedule, and everyone loves that. Everyone loves that there is so much World of Warcraft. Everyone cannot be happier about that. we're beginning to see what happens when you demand this much out of people, though. I think long term, when you don't have the resources to do it with the people that you have. And I think that that's what we're seeing here.
Let me add this much, and I'll get you to carry on, and then Jugs, I'd love to hear from you on the same one. And I don't want to give people the impression that I am fishing for a particular answer or that I'm wanting negative bullshit clickbait shit on my podcast. I just genuinely, want to hear some smart responses to what I think is a decent question. And as Zunder's saying, a friend of his just got a job on the Classic team. That's awesome, mate. And as we know they're hiring, we know they're trying to expand, that some form of budget has been thrown out there. So that's great to hear. Look, North, in saying everything that you just said, I put this to the devs in the interview that I had with them the other day that no doubt you've watched 3 or 4 times over by now, that, whilst some of the player base and, probably the bulk of the Countdown to Classic community and people with good heads on their shoulders like you and Jugs are rather empathetic to the Classic team, as we can hear through your words, that we understand that, life goes beyond skill at your job at times, and there are extraneous factors such as the size of the team and deadlines and whatnot that might affect the quality of the game. Whilst we remain empathetic to the plight of the worker in that regard, is there not a threshold that can still be crossed where you are pushing it at times when you do have paying customers and the quality of the product needs to be to a certain, of a certain quality that, makes your paying customers happy? Now, bugs happen. That's fine. I'm a casual player. I shrug my shoulders at many of these bugs and go, I don't give a fuck. I'm having fun with the game. But my reaction is not the same as perhaps some of the more hardcore players. So what I'm really getting at, North, is beyond the Classic team, I really sort of put, and they could never give me the answer that I was wanting, but it can go larger to point the figure more at Blizzard as a company as opposed to the Classic team, and really ask Blizzard the question of, are you really okay with doing this budget-wise and spreading the team as thin as you have? Aren't you concerned that the product will suffer and people will start grumbling? But and this is all, sorry, I'm absolutely rambling here, North, but this is all put into an even larger spotlight following some comments by fucking Mikey Barra today on Twitter, who has just become the class clown. His Twitter feed is abysmal. Really read it over the last year and you wonder how this man ever became top flight executive of a company like Blizzard. He's a fucking... I hesitate to say people are idiots. He's not an idiot because clearly he's got some form of intelligence that did allow him to rise to the top. But fuck, he just comes across as a fucking twat, quite frankly. And I think most Blizzard employees would be nodding along steadily to that kind of comment.
It's the only issue. Like, he isn't an idiot though. It's just the things that he's saying. It's just like, man, the fact that it's you will make everyone upset here.
He's oblivious, and he's not an idiot, but he's a smart guy who says dumb things, if that makes sense.
But he also, like, in the most recent thing that he said, not this most recent thing, but the thing before it, he was talking about, hey, like, like you should be empathetic to the Xbox dev and this is, or like the Xbox exec that was, in charge of all the studios being laid off. And he like said in that, like, there was a response that he like replied to his own tweet. He was like, hey, I know this is going to come off as tone deaf, but like, that's like a person, like that is a human being. That is like that is another person. That is a person that I know, this person that I empathize with. And then you get into the kind of like, it's kind of weird. It's kind of weird him very publicly defending a person, laying off really good studios. Like, it's like, hey man, this is not the time and the place. You're not wrong. That is another human being. We should have empathy for them. Right? Like, we should have empathy to every human being. There are times to call for empathy and times to not call for empathy, though, right? Like, there is a time and a place, and I think that's the thing that he lacks. It's the awareness of the fact that, hey, maybe it's not the best time to say X, Y, or Z. That's the bigger issue.
And the thing that gives me the shits more is that, like, you presume that people that make it to the C-suite and whatnot and really climb the ladder of rather large corporate entities do, I've been fortunate enough to, like, sometimes I meet guys like this. You go out and about and you'll bump into people like, oh, hey, I'm, rather senior management in company X or whatever. And you go, oh, good for you, blah, blah, blah. And they've got these larger than life personalities and are rather bombastic, and you can sort of see why they've made it to the, elevated levels that they have. But then I see a personality like Ibarra's, and it does leave me scratching my head going like, mate, you're supposed to be personable and like, big swinging dick verbally and all that shit. And he's just a fucking idiot in that regard. But anyway, what I'm getting at is he made some comments about QA today that obviously set a lot of people who work in QA, made them, they thought that was rather laughable. But he called out Blizzard products, which is, that's not something that's not happened in the past from the general public. Focusing on the quality, the apparent declining quality of Blizzard products over the years has been a favorite thing of the internet to do. So Ibarra comes out and goes, man, it's just so strange that we're not getting more, quality assurance with these games. The quality is just not up to snuff. What's going on at Blizzard? And the comedy behind a comment like that is obviously that Ibarra was at the head of the fucking ship when a fuckload of QA jobs were axed. So, North, I'd love for you to comment on that, but also what I'm getting at is, Ibarra aside, is there also a point where you feel that the criticism of Blizzard on the whole is warranted when it comes to quality at the moment?
Sorry, can you repeat the very, very last portion of that?
Okay, so I'm basically saying like, how far does be nice to the classic team go before you can start saying, well, hang on, I do pay for this game. I kind of am starting to expect some form of, not broken shit coming my way.
I think that that's a relationship that you should have with yourself. Like, I think that like, I talk to people a lot about this, about people really, really angry and people really upset about Kickstarter games. I think it's kind of the same thing. You should not feel entitled to share your anger publicly with employees of a company because they make a product that you like or don't like. That should not be a thing that you ever feel that like trying to just give your anger, nothing else, not like criticism, not feedback, not attempts at improving it, not, not constructive, even if it's harsh, constructive. No, like people just looking to be mad at those companies, because a lot of the times that's just what it is. People should never feel like they can do that. That's weird. Do you not think that's weird? I feel like that's weird.
I pay no attention to, and there's a number of people out there who are terminally online, and some of them are content creators, some of them are not. Just names that I know in the scene who I've said for years on the show, if you are constantly angry and you never turn that dial anywhere but from angry, and every comment online you've ever made is spitting fire and just like hatred and vitriol towards whatever product du jour is in your firing line right now, I pay no attention to those fucking people. I can't stand them. They're the worst form of online commentator because they have no fucking emotional variance. And it's just like, I just don't give a fuck what you have to say because you just wake up every day looking for the next thing to fucking hate because your life sucks.
That's kind of, I feel like that's a lot, maybe a plurality even, but like it's a lot of people online with World of Warcraft. People love to hate WoW. Right? People love to hate on, like that is their favorite thing. It's fine to hate something.
It's fine to hate something if you can just as easily turn on a dial and praise it the next minute for something you like.
Yeah, maybe I just think that I think the relationship, I think the thing that you're speaking to, right? You're saying, hey, when are we at what point are we entitled to feel upset that it's not worth our money? The answer to that is, hey, it's up to you. If you feel that way, think about what you want. If you feel that way and you don't want to play the game, don't play the game. If you feel that way and you want to make the game better, try and give feedback on how the game is, right? Start a YouTube channel, start a podcast, like email the devs, write Twitter posts, comment on the forums, write Reddit posts, right? If you want to do that, try and help that. That's a very, very hard thing to do. But if you don't want to do that and you don't like the game, maybe consider not playing the game, right? Like I don't understand why people then feel that people will have their entire online persona be disliking World of Warcraft That's crazy. That's a crazy thing to do.
Mate, I'll
Crazy
throw it
thing
to
to
Jugs
be.
in a second. Can I just get you to comment on the Ybarra thing as well about the QA comment?
From me?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, no, from you,
not from
North.
jokes.
Yeah.
I don't know how many QA jobs were lost on World of Warcraft specifically. Obviously, it's really shitty for him to make that comment and be so tone deaf when he was at the helm of the company during the layoffs. Obviously,
Read the
that's
room,
not even a
buddy.
read the room situation. It's never going to be okay for him to say something like that. That is always going to be read by people as like really, really dickish. Like I don't even know who it's for. I don't know who's happy to read that. I don't really know. The quality stuff is important and Blizzard needs to address it, but he could have just as easily have tweeted a thing where it's like, hey, this increased schedule for World of Warcraft is really, really, this is really, really rewarding and cool. These new game modes are really awesome. I do think though that as they're expanding that there's something to think about in terms of, like getting enough QA and enough like, active like sort of like design QA interaction that's efficient enough and in enough volume to push out these products at this volume, at this speed, at a good quality. But even if he says it that way, even if he says it in the most respectful way possible, it's still, hey man, it's you. Let someone else say that. Let someone on QA say that. And if it goes unsaid because you didn't say it, that's kind of okay, right? It's kind of better, I think.
Jugs, let me throw it to you. And I'm doing a horrible job of wording this question because I don't know how quite to word it. I don't know quite how to word it. I mean, I want to say politely, but like just more
No
efficiently.
worries.
But let me say it again to you. And I know this is quite tangential to obviously the race to world first stuff that we've been talking about, but it's somewhat tied in. Like I say, it's upsetting to find out that a bug, perhaps either fucked with or I don't want to say ruined, but certainly fucked with the race to world first. So you were there, you've seen this kind of stuff, you experienced it, and my question just comes back to similar to what I asked North. Like, you seem like a pretty level-headed guy, Jugs. You seem very intelligent. When I say things like gamers like us do seem to be very empathetic to the plight of a small dev team like the classic team, the industry on the whole is typically very much so. Well, certainly this obviously comes from devs, but you jump online, you hear people talking about game development, and the overwhelming narrative really is, hey man, go easy on game devs. Game dev is really hard. These are people, just fucking settle down with the harsh criticisms about your product. We're trying as hard as we can. This is a really tough job. We still make things that you love. Just fucking steady on. You know what I mean? My question is, that's all fine, and a lot of people are empathetic to game devs and the hard work that they do. But at what point maybe does the spotlight shift? Like, can there be a point where criticism does become justified beyond the human element, where you can point the target at the company and go like, hey man, I got nothing against you guys as individuals, but at the end of the day, I am paying for your product and I've got to voice from some frustrations with what I'm paying for, and I'll aim it at the company, but can I at least be justified in my bitching about the product as opposed to being told, hey, go easy, man. We're all just trying our best here. Do you know what I'm sort of saying?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a mixed bag. There's a bunch that goes into it when it comes to player perception. I've seen so many times there's a lot of WoW players that seem completely misinformed, where they're like, "Oh, why is the classic team putting time into Mop Remix or something?" And it's like, guys, these are different teams. These are not the same. Like, retail has nothing to do with classic. There might be some crossover with maybe some tech and maybe some art help or something like that, but like generally they're different teams, and like there's an ignorance with the player base, which I get. Not everybody's in game dev, but yeah, I do think it is important to be kind of empathetic to the folks, because most of the time, a lot of the gripes and concerns can be very much, out of the hands of the, floor level devs that you might be dealing with. A lot of these decisions on how big the team is, how it gets staffed up, how marketing things, a lot of release dates, a lot of these things, like the ground level devs don't really have a lot of say on. Um, So when you are interacting with those folks, like for sure, you want to have some empathy. I do think there's, a level of good faith depending on the product, the team, the franchises, whatever. You look at like Helldivers, for instance, just came out, had a shit ton of bugs, had a whole bunch of issues, but like the player base is very much willing to kind of go with it because it's new. They're having a lot of fun. It's great. There's a lot of communication. They're working on things. But yeah, I would say a lot of WoW players. I feel like most of them come from a jaded place and don't have a lot of good faith. So it can be difficult, working with working in that space. I personally, I'm professionally in game dev, so I have a lot of empathy towards
Oh,
fellow
there
game
you
devs.
go.
So maybe my perspective is a little, biased in that sense. So I do, have a lot of empathy in that. In the end, I mean, games are complicated. You're always going to have bugs, and it does suck when it impacts you.
Oh.
Granted, the scope of it can be very small. You think of people playing classic Cataclysm. These bugs that came out on release, in the grand scheme of things, how many people did this actually affect, especially in the short time it was around? Like, not a lot. It was very much, apparent for people watching. But generally speaking, it really doesn't affect 99% of the people playing. It just sucks that it was kind of, on a on a stage, more or less.
Definitely.
But yeah.
It's funny, obviously hearing you and North talk about it, like I'm definitely with you guys in that I do feel that like a disproportionate amount of online angry gamers sort of do seem to often be asking for the bugless game. And it's like, it just doesn't exist, guys. Just get over it. Like, games are going to have bugs. And for the most part, gamers are okay with that. It just depends on the gravity of the bug or the effort to fix them that often the discussion becomes about. So like,
I think it's more than that, though. I do think it's more than that, and I think that part of it, and I think that a large part of it, is that you saw that there was a like low communication when this was happening in Cataclysm, and that was the thing that people took issue with, was simultaneously the state of the game, right? And I think that there was a lot more changing in Cataclysm, and I think you see that in the kinds of bugs that we saw. They're bugs that we've never seen the kind of ever before, and because a lot of systems changed, a lot of things are adjusted, a lot of backend, I imagine, is really swapped around in that expansion, and maybe we don't appreciate how much that is, but that's not communicated to us. How could they even really communicate that to us? And what good communication is there for them to come out and say? Because that's what people are frustrated by. They're saying, hey, well, the game's in a bad state and we're not getting any words here. What are they going to come and do? What are they going to come and say? Hey, yeah, the game's in a bad state. You want them to take time from fixing the game to go and be like, hey, the game sucks, but we'll fix it. Aren't they, or do we already know that they're going to do that? What are we expecting? And also, we're expecting someone to then shoulder that burden and walk into the community light, a community light that is not very thankful, especially with the vocal members of it. People will just tear you down on social media, etc. People will just, generate hate for you as a result of you representing World of Warcraft. That just occurs. So who's going to voluntarily step into it then?
fair enough.
Right?
Hey, Jugs, I'm not going to dox you or anything, and please feel free to tell me to shut the fuck up and you don't want to answer the question, but I won't ask you where you work, but what kind of games do you work on?
I've kind of dabbled in a mix. I've released I've been on a few teams that released a couple of AAA games.
Oh, nice.
I've worked kind of more in like AA as well, but been around for a
What
while.
are you an engineer
Yeah,
or
what's
are
your
you
field?
a designer?
Only if you want to say, mate. You don't have to fucking answer.
I'm a producer.
Oh, good
Oh, you're a
stuff.
producer. Excellent.
There you
Cool.
go. Excellent. All right. Mate, let's go back to the race to world first. I want to get into the nitty gritty with you guys. So, like, we started talking about the choice of boss, and sorry if you listeners were a bit confused. If some of you classic Andes don't really know what we're talking about, like, this is a situation. You guys will correct me if I'm wrong. It's a couple of different locations, a couple of raids here that the guys are effectively porting back and forth between. So the selection of boss order is key to the timing and, how quickly they do the race. They're effectively starting in one spot, doing a couple of bosses, then going to a different raid entirely and killing a few bosses there. And that's why we're talking about the choice of bosses, if any of you were a bit confused. But Jugs, I'll kick you off with this one, and then we'll throw it over to North. If I can just ask, I know you've already touched on it a little bit, but what was probably the most challenging or difficult moment of the race for you guys? Was there a boss that you really struggled with? Was there a moment where you really had to change tactics on something for whatever reason, or a tank death that almost threw a massive spanner in the works? Talk to me about some of the more stressful moments.
Sure, yeah. I mean, like I said, the start was definitely kind of a punch in the mouth as far as meeting the bug that is magma. But I mean, other than that, yeah, I mean, as it was said before, we had a couple wipes that were unfortunate. That kind of, as much as you want to play through it, like you'd be naive to say that doesn't affect the mental for some folks. So it was a bit, disheartening that our kind of debut run was a bit sloppier than some of our practice runs. But it kind of just is what it is. As far as like bosses that are most difficult, I mean, I think as you could see with a lot of the other guilds, some guilds really struggle with AC. Primarily, that's Ascendant Council for I guess people that don't know that. Some people just really struggle with the RNG. I think it's always primarily like phase 2, just always seems to be the struggle, whether that's you have problems with kiting the orb and dealing with the gravity wells and the tornadoes bouncing you around, or it's people struggling with the chain lightning rod kind of thing. That seemed to be pretty much the downfall for most of the folks that wiped there. Other than that, though, I don't think there was like any other crazy fights that a lot of people struggled on.
What about you, North? Any poo in the pants moments?
Some almost bad situations. The Malorak thing kind of happened so quickly that it's not even really worth noting. It was just a dumb error. But the real, because that was kind of, no one was like freaking out. It wasn't a long occurrence. But the what's it called? We had a tank spec issue coming out of Alakir and into Halfus. So that sucked because we essentially only had 2 tanks in that fight.
Did your tank do what I do and just realized he forgot to spend all his talent points on anything?
He was ret. He was ret for it, and at one point, the funniest comment I've ever heard. T Mugsy, insane now, insane under pressure compared to what he used to be. His other tank cannot tank. He's just dead. He's on the floor. He's been told not to res. He's 2-tanking this fight. He is full on debuffs. He is just about to die, and he's just like, hey, Durs, the other tank, taunt. And Durs goes, can't taunt right now. And Tim is not yelling. He's just like, hey, Durs, taunt. And then Durs is like, bro, I can't right now. And he's like, taunt. He's like, I'm going to die if I taunt Tim. And then he's just like, hey, I don't care if you die. Taunt the boss. It was the most even exchange. Well, you think you'd just be screaming taunt at this point. But no, they're having just like a very normal, if kind of anxious
Please,
conversation
sir,
in front of the radio. Ultimately, no one died. It was fine. They just sent a lot more cooldowns there than they would normally. And, it's chill. Maybe should have 2-tanked it the entire time. Not actually, but it worked out. There was a Cho'Gall where the tank died. Main tank Tim died twice. We were really chill about that. We'll keep a res up at all times for the tank. We'll never spend a res if it's not. We'll immediately spend on the res, obviously. On the really the bulk of these fights. And then there was some difficulty, and it was just Malorak. So other than that, yeah, it was fine. Alakir had a moment in it where it was looking pretty rough towards the end. So people made some dumb mistakes. We caught out a couple of people like early. I think we lost like 1 in phase 1, and then lost like 3 or 4 going into P3 almost immediately, just standing in the wrong position. So that was kind of longer than we wanted to, and it made summons a lot worse. And and one of our shamans on Conclave, he disconnected right as the raid was opening, and then he got forced behind an update. And we wanted to wait for him before going in properly because we wouldn't. Conclave can kind of be a little bit weird if you unbounce the platform that he was on. Like, we were having the most trouble we had on Conclave was on the platform where that shaman was. So we really didn't want to push it without him, and we didn't have an immediate backup. So we had to wait like around a minute and a half, which that was really nerve wracking. That might have been the most nerve wracking part because everyone's kind of just like sitting there tapping their foot, being like, "When you getting in? When you getting in?" Kind of just panicked a bit. So I imagine it's pretty similar to what would happen if you encountered a bug like that and you're wiping. You're kind of just like, "Okay, am I moving here? What am I doing?" Kind of, you have to make that decision like immediately. You see that bug, you immediately just swap and you have to get out of there, and that's a really tough decision to make. And 9 times out of 10 people are going to make a mistake, pull that a second time, pull it a third time in some cases, and just kind of panic. And I think we did a really good job not really letting that get to us. There was a bit of it, there was an air of it when the Maloriak thing happened. They kind of started to be like, to kind of dive into what happened in the wipe, but then immediately peeled back. Hey, let's focus on what we're doing. Let's get res is getting out quickly here. Let's get our buffs. Let's focus on what we're doing, not what we did wrong. And I think that was that was a good moment for them. They recovered really effectively from that wipe. And like I said, every single one in the top 3 had a wipe. And I think that they can do it next time. I think that in Firelands, I think Polar will just be number 1. I think that they'll just take world first.
There you go. All right, the gauntlet's been thrown down. Hey, let me ask the dumbest. I'm allowed one dumb question every fucking episode. North, you know the rules. I should know this after how much WoW I've played over the years, but you said something there about your tank going down mid-fight, and obviously tanks do drop in the middle of a raid encounter, and the raid has to adjust. Dumb question. When a tank drops and they get battle res, does that reset the cooldown on their taunt or not? Like, can they just pop back up and taunt immediately or not?
They can if their taunt's not on cooldown. It doesn't refresh it, but generally
right. So
no.
So the timer is the same.
Taunting. Yeah, the timer is the same.
Right, but if you let's say for example,
if you res and taunt, you're almost certainly going to just die. Right, like depends on the boss, obviously, but you don't want to be tanking immediately after you're dead.
Oh, right, but I'm thinking like, but don't I have a thing like if a resto, let's say you, I'm just doing a stupid example here. Let's say you've just taunted, you're the tank. Your taunt's now on the 10-second cooldown or whatever. You drop a second and a half later from a 1 hit, massive hit, whatever it might be. The resto druid battle res you. He's fucking quick on the trigger. He's straight on it. You're up 2 seconds later at like, don't you res with full health or like pretty close to it?
If you have a druid res, you res at full health. So yes.
Yeah. So you back up.
That works here. You can have the druid do it with everything. Yeah.
Yeah. So you back up your full health.
You would be tauntless there, but every tank is more than 1 taunt.
Yeah. So but you that tank that dropped would still have to wait about 6 seconds for his taunt to come back, right?
If he didn't have another one, he would have to. You could shout or like whatever other taunt that he has.
Yeah.
If it's defense, if it's dark command, if it's death grip.
Yeah, a death doesn't reset basic little cooldowns. Yeah. Okay.
No.
All right. No. Gotcha. All right.
But the system, as far as I'm aware, I could be wrong on this. I don't think that the Cata system is designed to be what we're currently seeing with reses. This is not the right system, right, Jugs? Am I cooked on that? This is a retail system.
We have like the retail charge system.
Yeah, we have the retail charges, and the way this is designed in Cataclysm, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's you get 2 reses per fight or something, and that's it.
Yeah.
If you get a maximum of 2 reses,
it's a per instance type, like a number, like a cap.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, but it's 2, but you get it instantly.
Most people are used to having like 2 or 3 or something like that for 25 man, but in this version, yeah, you have like it's based on like the retail charge system, which is a bit strange.
All right, guys, let's just quickly check some things out. As again, I'm diving into the sort of the finer details of your phenomenal runs.
I have a question.
Yeah, go for it, mate.
Actually, speaking of that, did you guys run a BM hunter to abuse certain something stacking potentially?
North? Oh, he's gone all quiet. He doesn't want to say.
Your Honor, I was not actually aware of this bug. The bug did contribute to their raid's damage. They had a BM hunter. I was not aware of the bug until after the race. They told me. They did not want to tell me. Because I was helping Blizzard report a whole bunch of bugs, and so they were like, "Hey, yeah, don't tell North about the hunter thing, right? And fair enough." I believe that was happening with a bunch of other buffs too. They caught it on some
They
other
fixed
stuff.
some of them.
And I helped,
Yeah.
and I was reporting those as well, because I'd stumbled upon those just independently testing. The crit buff from the wolf was stacking as well, which is why people were having a ton of extra damage. Kings was stacking in general for the first test, which obviously was reported very, very early on. But then there were other
Yeah, I
things that
remember
weren't
marking Kings
fully
stacked
overriding.
for a little bit.
Yep. So it was that, but it was with the Hunter BM 5%.
So wait, let's formalize this accusation and indictment, Jugs. What exactly? Let's just get into it. What are you talking about? What's the workaround with BM?
It's the pet buff, the shale spider thing.
Right. Okay. So North,
I
you've
can
been
neither
charged
confirm
with.
nor deny. I have a question for you, Josh. Actually,
Here we go. You've been. Wait, whoa! I'm not on fucking trial here.
No. Your Honor, disregard that statement. My client is he's high. But listen. Did Progress and Beef Bar have the DMF buff on Nax Ramus Prog?
Yep, they did.
You think that was a bug? You think that was intended?
No, probably not.
But if one of them didn't
especially
have
now
it,
that they removed it,
and the other one had it, they would have both immediately. Whichever one had it, whichever one didn't, would have immediately won or lost based on the presence of that buff, and that sucks. And they should fix that. But right, they don't know if it's going to be fixed, and so they play around it and they don't report it. Right, this is kind of what teams are going to do. Right, the player's responsibility at the end of the day is not to ensure that the product is as clean as possible. It's not, and to put the onus on them is, it is a bit cooked. I like helping the team, and I'll always report the bugs that I see to the team. But you can get why a guild, they think they have an advantage, they want to leverage that advantage. They're gonna sit on it. This is extremely important to them. This is their favorite hobby. This is a thing that they take seriously. This is more serious than a job for a lot of people. The amount of hours that I have put into this, the amount of hours that other people in leadership positions in guilds know how difficult this kind of thing is to do, how difficult it is to run a guild that can achieve like this and that spends the time like this. And so they'll do quite a lot. They will do quite a lot to succeed. And I don't think that they're the problem in this. Right.
All right.
Realistically, that's just what I think. But I can confirm nor deny any potential abuse anywhere.
Are you satisfied with the answer, Jugs? Do we let him off the hook? What do you reckon?
Well, I mean, I'm sure if the other guilds knew about it, they would have done it too. His point about DMF and stuff.
Clever use of game mechanics. It's
players
an RPG,
are gonna
we found the stacking buff.
Players are gonna do what's available to them, regardless. So.
Nah, fuck that. You've been charged with shenanigans, and I declare you guilty, North.
It might
I
just
actually
be
didn't
that,
know about it. I straight up, hand to the good Lord.
So
I did not know about it.
You're so
I did not know about it. I would have probably reported it had I known. I would. It's easy for me to say that I would have or I wouldn't have, but I don't actually know. I would have had to have known it in the moment and known that it was in direct conflict with some of my friends. Like that would have been a difficult decision either way.
Basically, Josh, this buff was an additional 5% main stats in Stamp.
It's insane.
Right.
It's insane.
Across
it's
the
absolutely
raid.
bonkers.
That is huge.
That they shouldn't have had. But
there you go. All right. Well, look, I mean, it's funny because I'm
pretty sure Wusai was BM so that he could get the top of All Stars. I just don't think it's deeper than that, man. He's just trying to parse.
I know a lot of people that'll scumbag meme specs to get.
It just so happened that the spider buff gave us an additional 5% stats. He just wanted to parse it. He was just there for the All-Star points. He was 1,400. He was perfect score. That's lovely for him.
Such a bullshit.
I'm so proud.
Anyway, it's hard because I want to get you guys now just on a little jaunt talking amongst yourselves about comps and the difference between the two comps that Variable and Polar had. But I respect that, you guys are competitors at the end of the day as well, and there might not want to be a whole lot of note sharing. So, feel free to, pull punches or not explain fully why you did what you did, but tell the good listeners as much as you can. I'm just sitting here now look, I'm not really sure how it works. I'm sitting here staring at your comps, but I do appreciate that, for certain fights you might have pulled people in or out. You'll be able to tell me that as we go along. But just on the whole here, as the generalized comp, I think the first thing that really leaps out at me, and again, please do tell me if this is wrong and you actually did things differently, but straight off the bat, tank-wise, I can see that, Jugs variable has a feral in there, and Polar's gone with dual blood. Is that you ran a feral? Is that right?
Yep.
So what was the decision there? In I know ferals are supposed to be phenomenal off tanks in Cataclysm, but one of the themes of the month at the moment is the overpowered nature of the blood DK, and Polar's run dual bloods, and I'm sure a lot of people are obsessed with the blood DK. And you've gone in with the race to world first and gone, nay, we want a feral. Tell us why, and tell us how you think you went for you.
Yeah, I think generally people run feral for the times where they're able to not be actively tanking and contribute in DPS.
Jump in cat, yeah.
So I mean, that's one of the main things, as well as ease of applying a physical buff in the sense of armor reduction. Otherwise, you'd have to have a rogue or a BM hunter or warriors apply that, whereas a feral can just throw fairy fire up and call it a day. But generally, it's just because of ferals just being a good off spec or
Right.
an off tank that can contribute a pretty good amount of DPS when not actively tanking.
I love to hear it. Now, North, maybe it's better to say to you why the dual blood DKs. Maybe, variables doing it right with the utility of the feral and jumping into cat for the extra DPS. If I were to suggest that Polar needed the crutch of the double blood, what would you have to say? Why'd you go to DKs?
DK's just a stronger tank. Feral's the copium meme. Use it for a third tank if you want to, but Feral's also just not that good of a DPS. At the end of the day, at least if you take the ret as your third, you can have the mage not be arcane. So at least you get that advantage. Or if you run the BM, I believe it's the same thing. I believe that's the same 3% buff. And so you get advantages elsewhere. I think Feral is weak. I think it was stronger than it intended because there's some like agility bug or something. I remember hearing something about that. I remember vague discussion of Feral being too good because of agility armor scaling or something like that. So I think that was that the reason why you guys chose Feral? Did you guys like base it off of like the PTR performance?
Oh, here we go.
Did you,
He's
like,
he's
test
trying to
everything,
get
or-
you to say that you're abusing stuff as well, Jugs.
No, I don't think that's an abuse of anything. It's just looking like. Did you guys do it? Did you guys test Feral on the PTR and then decide to play Feral based on that?
Yeah, pretty much all of our practice was running that tank comp. We didn't really try anything else, so we
You didn't
kind
try
of
anything
just
else?
ran
Okay,
it.
okay. That's fair. Yeah, and it was just the same thing with us. We just ran the same comp. We switched tanks. At one point, we were like swapping around how often the because originally we were gonna have primary blood, and then the second tank was going to be the paladin, and then the third tank was going to be the DK. So the DK would come in whenever we needed a third tank. Was originally what we were going to do, but it was just turns out that tank was worse at DPSing, and so even though we preferred it the one way, it just didn't work out. So we ended up swapping it around. So it was more often that the ret was almost always ret, and then he would step in for like Sinestra. The tanks, the fights that need three tanks. So not too often.
Right.
But yeah, I think it's just a better comp. I think the more interesting thing, I think it's the rogue, and I think
Oh,
that came down
baby, you're
I think
jumping
that-
ahead. We're gonna get there. We're gonna get there.
Okay.
Let me just. I want to do the healers first, and then trust me. The rogue thing is sticking out like red dog's balls to me right now. So I do want to hear about that. So put a pin in that for a couple of minutes, North. Jugs, on the healers, the interesting thing is, you guys are basically the same, but I don't know, again, if it's a case of because you are a newer guild, maybe you didn't have as much choice in terms of personnel, I'm not sure, but you've got the much maligned Holy Priest in there as opposed to a second Discipline Priest. What was the go with that one?
I mean, we on like some of our previous polls and PTR and things like that, played around a lot with the comp. I think we originally like first started out with double Resto Druid and only one priest. And we played around with picking up two priests. And on some fights we'd go, double disc, sometimes not. So it was just kind of finding where it works. And having disc and holy just ended up working out probably the best for us.
All right, fair enough.
I think our comps were pretty different. It wasn't just that difference as well. They perma ran that Resto Druid. Or did you guys not perma run the Resto Druid?
No, we did. Our flex was the shaman.
Yeah, like their flex being the shaman. Is it just because you guys just don't like SLT? Is that the meme? It's just not good enough cooldown, or
It's a
why
great
is that the
cooldown
flex
for
versus the why the perma druid versus the perma shaman? I feel like shaman is just better.
I don't know.
Is it a situation? Is it like
We
a play
felt
situation? A lot with us. A lot of decisions we made, and this is a nice thing to have this tier. A lot of it was like, hey, this person is just because we had enough people to like look around. A lot of it was personnel stuff. Like we ran more warriors than we otherwise would because we had a lot of people who were strong on warrior.
I heard
some of it was of that.
Yeah.
Like our Resto Druid, plans on basically playing like double Resto Druid kind of situation. Our shaman is like you could almost more say probably an Ellie main that flexes Resto and as the 6 healer. So it did end up kind of just being that situation where the shaman was just our flex player, and arguably an Ellie Sham. If you have to choose a flex between a druid and a shaman, Ellie is heads above way better than a bootling. So.
Way better. We just forced our druid to level a hunter. He plays the hunter on the bosses where he's not playing druid. We'll summon him in. Fuck Boomkin, man.
We actually didn't do any swaps.
None. Yeah, those are the only swaps we did. We did swaps on Alakir, Sinestra, and thing for the druid to swap. Those are the only swaps we made.
All right, we've done.
We don't think they're too bad because they all of those fights involve like a lot of downtime beforehand, right? Like Alakir, obviously you can log off instantly. It's fine after Conclave. Neff, you can log off after whatever third boss that you do. And Sinestra, you can log off whatever boss you do. It takes it adds an extra 5 seconds. I'm fine with that. I think that's fine in a lot of the situations. If you think the comp is legitimately better, if you think it's a challenging enough boss, I'm here for it. But you're right. In the absence of it, Ellie is just a better thing to just kind of float.
I'm waiting for Jugs to snap and just to call you a snarky cunt. I'm so ready.
What do you mean? We're having a good exchange.
I'm trying to stoke the fires of.
If anything, Polar ran things that were more different from other folks because everybody ran a rogue except for Polar.
Rogue is copium.
But let's get into it. We've done the tanks and the healers. Variable sitting there with the rogue. Nary a rogue to be seen in Polar's composition. North tee off. What's going on? Why do you think they won? Why do you think they ran a rogue? Why do you not like rogues?
They ran a rogue because they're afraid of spike collars.
Oh, here we go.
Literally, they're terrified of an NPC.
Here we go.
Okay, that's it. That's it. All right, tell me I'm wrong. Did you run a rogue because you're terrified of spike collars? Yes or no?
No, that is part of how we deal with them. Our strategy
so you're partially terrified
was...
of spike collars.
No.
I want to clear for the record.
Such a god.
No, our original strategy was what is it called? Hibernate. We were using Hibernate, but there seemed to be problems with that. So we switched off that, and the next best kind of interrupts. You could either do like DK Death Grip chains, you could have Repentance, you could have rogues with Gouge, or you can have hunters with Scattershot. We basically would use DKs to pull them in, but we also used rogue for Gouge and hunters scattering. Typically how we dealt with them.
Yeah, we didn't like the we just didn't want to have the rogue. Ultimately, we thought that it was low damage and its only real cause to take was for that boss, and you could just do it like you said. You could just do it with other mechanics. We just did it with the DKs. There's no there are fights where rogue is good. They exist. They're real. They are not varied and many enough to justify running a rogue. The damage is just atrocious. The utility is also minimal, right? Like, yes, your MD's good, but if I'm not taking a rogue and I'm taking a hunter, in that case, I'm getting way more damage. It's far more accessible. It's far safer. Its MD is better. It has better defensives in most cases because it's just at range. It's an infinitely better class. That you could just build one, instead of that, just to build another hunter on your team and have your Death Knights press their buttons properly. definitely worth it in the long term.
This is all sort of news to me, North, and I'm sort of, Mike and I, Balls of Steel, are sort of surprised to hear all this about rogues. And, you know, I was going to ask both of you this question, and you've already mostly answered it, North, but I was just going to say, you know, you guys at the sweatier end of the scale here, is there a spec or class that you're already finding yourselves discriminating against? And you've mostly answered the question in everything you just said about rogues, but like for the laymen who are listening, scratching their heads going, wait, what the fuck is North talking about? I thought rogues were really strong in Cata. What's the deal?
I think they're strong after the beginning patch. I think they're strong even in the like full T11 gear. They're not strong at the start of the X-Pack.
Not right now. Okay, to the point you won't even take one to raid. Jugs, what do you guys have a spec or a class that you were discriminating against? Do you disagree with North's take on your use of the rogue?
I don't know. I don't think rogue's that bad. I mean, if you look at progress, obviously, you know, it depends what their hunters are doing and stuff, but like rogues were top for them.
Well, yeah, progress is running 2 rogues, North. Get that up here.
Progress is running 2 rogues. That's just that is a greed mistake copium thing.
Oh, here we go. Progress doesn't know what they're doing from
no.
Quote,
it is. Wait. Just because they did better, they did better because ultimately speaking, they wiped, but they were slightly faster than us, right? Like had we not wiped where we wiped, we would have been fine. They ran a riskier comp than us. They ran also things that are extremely hard to play versus things that are really, really easy to play. It's much easier to get someone just loaded on to the UHTK or a hunter than it is to get someone loaded fully on like an Affliction Warlock. And their best damage dealers in some situations are their Affliction Warlocks and their rogues, right? You have to deal with the players that we have though, and what they're playing and on what they can do. It was enough of an upgrade over a warrior, right? Like we have a warrior player who also plays rogue. He's great at both of them. He's probably better at rogue than he is at warrior. Warrior's just better. It just does more damage naturally. Yes, there are situations in which a rogue really, really, really juicing it can do it, but then they don't bring a rally. And if we're designing our CDs around the fact that this warrior's there versus the warrior not being there, then the difference being, oh, okay, grip this mob an extra time, not that deep. I don't think anyone's rogues did well except for the progress rogues also. Pretty sure it's only the progress rogues that did well. In terms of like when you're looking at just like raw damage numbers.
Hey. There's a little rogue that could over on the variable team that you're throwing shade at right now. How could you? Poor Pacemaker. I love you, Pacemaker.
Was Pacemaker doing a ton of damage? I imagine not.
I think most of the rogues were middle of the pack. Like if you look at Newman, they had a rogue too that was also above all their hunters. So like I don't know. I think it just depends.
That's the thing. Our rogue is not bad. Like what am I missing? What am I missing? Our rogue is not bad, and he just did more damage on Hunter. No, I did this rogue, even this Newman rogue. This Newman rogue doesn't do anything. He doesn't do damage. Where is his damage? I'm looking here. I can't find it. He's constantly. Let's look. Sinestra? Nope. Neff? He's up there on Neff. He's like 27 on Neff, but Neff is a fight riddled by MC. BS when it comes to damage. It's not normalized. I think Rogue's copium. I think it's trash.
Tell us what you really think. Okay.
Run a hunter, run a warrior. I just feel like it's objectively better.
All right.
Oh, their rogue was 4th on Sinestra Dam. If you actually look at Sinestra Dam and not whelps and.
Oh, that's true, but I'm not about to in the middle of the pod sit here and I could
no,
just do that. Let's look at the P2.
I know we're going in the weeds.
Let's look at only P3. Let's look at only P3 damage. You know what? He's doing something. Do we super even care about only P3 damage? Do we care about P2 damage the most? I feel like P2 is the hardest part of the fight.
It depends.
So we care about P2 damage the most. The Rogue is the bottom of P2 damage. He's barely above Foji's Disc Priest in P2 damage. Rogue is garbage, trash tier, terrible fucking class. In this current phase of the game with the gear that we have, rogues, you will scale well. I love rogue. Subtlety rogue in this expansion is the second best version of PvE rogue that I've ever played. The best version is Hellfire Citadel, full 4-set subtlety rogue with a soul capacitor. The most fun you will ever have, the most dopamine you will ever have pressing ambush is there. So get hyped for WoD Classic. It's gonna be huge.
There you go. So North, we'll keep going through the DPS differences, and Jugs, you can throw the fucking gloves on and give it to North. Well, actually, no, we'll start with Jugs, and we'll get Jugs commenting on fucking Polar's composition now that you've had your say on theirs, North. Jugs, so when Polar wasn't busy throwing in BM hunters to abuse things, they were also throwing in forearms warriors, allegedly forearms warriors. And interestingly, just what do they got there? The Destro Warlock and the Demonology Warlock, no Affliction. You guys went with 2 Affliction, 2 Arms Warriors. There's a fair bit of difference there in the DPS. What do you think of their choice to go with like things like no Affliction and fewer Arms Warriors?
I mean, it sounds like some of it was, working with the players they have. It also sounds like a large part of their strategy was relying on rallies. I don't know. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounded like that's what you just said.
On the first point, Your Honor, I'm pleading the fifth. On the second point, absolutely. Rallies are based. Very powerful cooldown, very easy, very effective, very universal. Kind of just free.
All right, Jugs, let's talk about your comp though. Did you find that, so you've got the 4 unholies, the 4 survivals. Did you find that loading up like that? I mean, that's almost half your DPS, just over 2 specs. Did you feel the oomph there?
Yeah, I mean, we felt those are, the same way North is saying, like, ditch the rogues, just get more unholies, more hunters. It's kind of the same deal. It's like, if you can get as many unholies and hunters as possible, that's kind of what we did. We didn't take, like a boomkin or some of these other things. Some of it was, as I said, like, we didn't do swaps. So we didn't have a big roster necessarily to pull from in that sense. That would really change the comp. So we kind of just ran with what we had and the players of, whatever specs we had. So that kind of largely shaped it. We originally were going to run another Elisham, but had them play Hunter instead. Just in the value of hunters are really good. They can be live lords. They can do good damage. They have good utility. There's a lot of fights in here. Frost traps are big value, or the ability to nuke things down from range. So that's primarily why we went heavy on hunters, and then unholies. Yeah, I mean, also just in this phase, in this gear level, they just do big damn with not really much gear.
There you go.
And can very much be live lords, with their kit.
Here's a question for you, and North might chime in on this as well. I feel like I know the answer, but I'll ask anyway from our friend Go, who says, like, in the Race to World First, is there an unspoken rule about how many swaps raids can have?
A spoken rule.
A spoken rule?
Predetermined
rule. It's a set rule.
Oh, really? I wouldn't have thought there was a rule, but there is. What is it?
It's different tier to tier. I don't know how many it is for this tier because there's not a lot of point to doing lots of swaps for this tier. Most of your comp is going to stay the same throughout. You might have some swaps here or there. I actually don't know the number of rules. It's usually written on the Discord.
Oh, yeah, funny that the guy abusing BM buffs doesn't read the rules.
I just know that there is a number, and I don't know what the number actually is because, again, I was just running logistics and stuff. I wasn't an active organizer of this race.
Oh, here we go. I just work here, Your Honor.
I do just work here. I'm a logs guy, and I'm an analyst. I can't go to Yemen, Josh.
Yeah,
Josh,
I'm not sure I'm not sure what the cap was, but yeah, generally speaking, there's like you could only have up to 6 swaps or 10 swaps or 15 or whatever it is.
And before it's been like sometimes it's been like, okay, you can't do more than 24. It's like, okay, one person has to be shared has been a rule that they've done before. So it's one continuous raid, and it's not you have to share one person because you can have 2 different raids just independently clear stuff in an order, and that's obviously that doesn't fly. So they have rules to cover that kind of thing so that you couldn't have progress 1 going into Conclave and then Bastion and Progress 2 going into Blackwing Descent. Obviously, that would be cooked.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, something we hadn't touched on too is there was a bit of pre-clearing with trash and stuff that some people took advantage of. which is, I mean, totally viable strat. People do it all the time. We
Mm.
actually were talking about doing it, but decided not to.
I get it. I personally hate it. I wish they just did the whole like, hey guys, we're
I
just
don't
gonna.
like pre-clearing either.
Yeah, I think that like the governing authority should just be like, hey guys, we're just doing the whole fucking raid. That's the rule. Just do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but then where does it come in with skips and stuff, right? Like that's the difficult thing. Then you have to just have like a general rule of, okay, there aren't trash requirements, but play nice. Where is it play nice, right?
Yeah,
Is
but
the
then
Yeah.
TOGC
pulling
logging
off the
is
skip.
TOGC logging out? Is TOGC logging out to skip the resets for the RP? Is that too far, or is that right? Like you have to begin to adjudicate that kind of thing because that super sucked when Polar lost a whole ton of positions when we had just or like right before we went to Faralina, we got way worse result in TOGC because we didn't do the skips. We didn't know about the skips, right? But
Yep.
realistically, that's what it came down to. It was a cringe race. I didn't think it was a good race. It really sucked that that's what determined it for like a couple of matchups. But it's TOGC. It's not that deep. A, B,
Yeah, typically for Prague, it's kind of no rules. It's
just
just
kind of just hey, so long as you
skip
don't
as much shit
exploit
as you
the
can.
bosses,
Right.
yeah. If you don't exploit the bosses, go nuts.
Yeah,
Where
that's
are
why
you?
in Nex you had raids starting like on the ramp right before like Vesuvius, for instance, where they'd skip like an entire wing of trash, or they would do different starting positions. Even back in what was it, SSC, where you would have like you'd start over by, I think it was by Leo if I remember, or you just start on Lurker and just skip like a ton of the trash.
Yeah. And I mean, people did that for the progress. Like the progress involved people, like uh, in SSC and TK, if I'm not mistaken, people like rocket booting, like and skipping a whole shit ton of trash that wouldn't normally be skipped. Initially,
Yeah,
you
you'd be
could just
running
go
up in the
right.
pipes.
You could go right to Vash. Initially, they had to fix this. You could just rocket boot to Vash, and you could
Yep.
just go and kill Vash instantly, right? And technically, that's the instance is cleared, right?
Yep.
So yeah, that was funny. I think that was funny. That was strange. It does kind of suck when it doesn't go your way though on that kind of thing. I do think that there should be a good faith rule. It's like, hey, don't have any groups pre-clear for you. Skipping's fine. Do your skips, pop off. But if it comes down to it's a multi-race tier and then you're clearing trash, that does feel bad. I think that sucks. I think that it shouldn't be allowed
Guys,
by Warcraft logs.
we'll start to wrap it up. We'll hit the home stretch here, and I just got like one or two questions left. I just want to say, I mean, I feel like we should, at least for a few minutes here, talk about progress. I mean, they have been just a behemoth of a guild that just continue to rack up world first after world first. It's all well and good for people like me and outsiders looking in to go like, oh yeah, progress, what a guild, they've done it again. But I'd really love to hear, and I'm not inviting you to heap praise on them. I want some honest words about how you feel about this guild. It might be a bit different because they're European, you guys are in the North American region, you're kind of going for your own regional world first as well in a way as world first. But I mean, really interested to feel what the internal commentary amongst races is about progress. Are they just this fucking, New England Patriots circa the 2000s and 2010s of rating that you just feel a fucking almost nigh unbeatable? Or like you guys have both already said, you feel confident that you can fucking take them for Firelands. So like just more about the achievement and who they are as a guild. Like how do you guys feel about progress and seeing them come in first again? Jugs, I might start with you.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, they've been around for a really long time. Obviously, they have their pedigree of performance and good players, and it only gets bolstered, especially as some of the top guilds decide to not continue. It's kind of the logical step of where a lot of these top talent kind of goes, because that is kind of the place to aspire to go to. So they do have the I guess you could say the advantage of a kind of infinite skilled player pool. Also, it just always kind of seems like EUs are, built diff, I guess. But I guess typically speaking, it just seems the level of preparedness when it comes to, pre-race or pre-prog kind of prep when it comes to private servers or anything like that. They've always seemed to get the most out of the time spent there, and yeah, it just seems like they're typically able to come up with some of the better strategies. So I mean, yeah, I guess hats off to him in that sense. It does seem hard to beat. But as we saw, in this race, getting to that top spot isn't as out of touch as people might think. So it's very possible for there to be contenders.
There you go. North, I'll throw it over to you, same question, but also asking, and again, I have to stress, I'm not fishing for a negative response here. I'm not trying to create a Jerry Springer episode, but like, is there any form
I'll
of...
fight for you. I'll fight for you, Josh.
Is there any form of animosity amongst top tier guilds towards progress, or is it actually mostly respect?
I think it is mostly respect. I think it's almost entirely respect.
Yeah, I don't think there's much animosity.
And here's the thing: do you know? Let me pull out my orb. Let me here dust off my head. Do you know the story of how progress came to be,
No.
Josh?
No.
My understanding, I'm not the best historian on this, but I played in the servers where this was relevant, and so I played on K2 where a guild called Praise the Sun was made. Obviously, Dark Souls reference, and then on the next server they played on, they were called Praise. My understanding is that this guild was led by Jin Do, and it had a lot of the officers that are currently responsible for a lot of success of progress. I'm not 100% sure how much carryover there is, so that's what I was saying. I'm not sure exactly how these things line up, but the guild that became Progress was a coup of Praise. Praise was led, I think, pretty unilaterally by Jindo, who was the GM at the time, and the people were like, hey, listen, he wasn't one of the stronger players in the roster. He was kind of like one of those GMs hiding. He wasn't like a weak player by any means, but he wasn't, the strongest among them. And that was very obvious, I am told. And he was kind of ousted. They moved forward, and they moved forward in a way where, they were even willing to cut their own leader that early on. That was the kind of guild that they were. He wasn't up to par. He wasn't meeting their standards even then. And so I think that speaks to the kind of players that they are. I think generally speaking, they are exceptionally hands off. You want to join Progress. If you're a decent raider, you probably can, but you're going to have to bring your own character, right? You're going to have to level it. You're going to have to gear it in GDKPs. You're going to have to come completely prepared, and you're going to have to wait for a chance where they need you more than you need them because someone's flaked. It's a long PTR session. They can't get XYZ up on XYZ, extra server that they've spun up. They don't have a person there. If you're willing to then fill at that moment, then you get your shot. And that's just the way that guild is run. So people are constantly, they have the healthiest bench of any WoW guild because everyone is constantly clamoring to get there, and that's the benefit of the top spot. That's what you get. That's what you earn.
Yeah.
Right? They were the best walking in. Did they have better talent than Apes? I think initially on Classic, I don't think so at all. I think that their players were worse at that point, but I think that their leadership is the second best leadership in Classic WoW. I think it is second only to Polar.
Oh, here we go. Knew that was
We've
coming.
just had less time.
So, I mean, I never really thought of it this way. It really is kind of like, I wish I had thought of this. It goes without saying. It's kind of like the Nick Saban Alabama analogy with like, the college football powerhouses. Like you're going to be able to recruit the best because everyone wants to play for the winner.
Yeah, but and then you get, I mean, but that's the thing that you then benefit from, right? Like as an existing thing, right? Like the first time when Polar was formed on Wrath, because it was a Somme guild, and originally it was called Ides. But when Polar stepped into Classic again, and not Somme, and not a different version, like into the retail version of Classic, they walked into Nax, and they weren't competing with anyone on Nax. We weren't competing for anyone. We weren't looking for anything. We were there. We knew that we wanted to be a progression guild, but it was like, hey, we don't have that yet. We can't do anything yet. We're here with a ragtag bunch of fuckwits. And then we go into Ulduar, and the leadership does everything within their power to really play as much as they can, fill it with random pugs, have Sisiban and Bolt and the Russians fill our Ulduars as we're just trying to glean any amount of information about these bosses as we're trying to chip away the difference, the mountain in front of us with a fucking chisel. Because, why would anyone come play for our guild? Yeah, we've got spunk, and that's it. And then you have to sit there and you have to sell that vision to other players. We left Fairlina at one point because we knew that we wouldn't be able to recruit, and as our our guild got better, that who would just siphon off from us? Bipolar would siphon off from us. We went to a dying server to wall ourselves off where people could still transfer in, built up strength there, came back to Fairlina, put up an okay, worse than we wanted result in ICC, but again, along the path to then bring up to what should have been world for what could have been, not should have. We lost fairly. But what could have been world first, had they not wiped there on that Maloric, they don't make that one mistake. They have gone from world 20th to first overnight, and they have gone from 20th, or was it 20th? I believe it was 20th to third in a tier, right? And I think that they will only be on the up because of that. I'm very confident, not only the people that are there, the people that they will then get the attention of, because now they're on the front page and they'll stay there.
There you go.
I think that matters a lot. I think that it's really hard to find that initial rolling mass.
Yeah,
that's
fair enough.
very challenging for a guild.
Jugs, we'll go with the last question. Like, you already sort of mentioned it, but like, again, I have to praise you guys. It's such a phenomenal effort coming in fifth on really your first kind of official outing as a relatively new guild, just put together in the last few months. You guys sound confident, but like, how do you like your chances going into something like a Firelands with more time?
Yeah, I think we're pretty confident going in. Like I said, even this, ranking is a fine a fine place. Like I said, we wanted to kind of limit our expectations, or I guess dampen them in the sense of anything we get is great. Like if we do well, that's awesome, it's fantastic. But still, have that in mind of like, don't get too crazy. If we do, mess up some things or whatever, don't freak out. Like, we are a brand new guild. We're still getting that cohesion working together and stuff like that. We do have a limited player base, and just wanted to make the most out of T11 to hopefully get some interest, get some recruitment going on, and see what we can do for T12 for Firelands. That's kind of been the real goal. I think it's also kind of a laying the pavement for future stuff, not just T11 and T12, but obviously Dragon Soul. But we're also have our eye on some MOP stuff that's inevitably going to come out. So I feel like our chances are pretty good. So yeah, I think
Very
we should
good.
do well.
Very good. And North, you guys were 6 minutes behind progress in this race. I think you said something earlier. I'll put the words in your mouth, even if you haven't. You've called it. You've said we're taking Firelands. We're coming for that number one slot, and we're going to fucking get it. How are you feeling?
We were coming for it. We were coming for it here as well.
Obviously.
We did not want to. We've done that up to every tier up to then. We've been like, hey, listen, we're going to do our very, very best, but we can't win this. We went into this. We were like, hey, we can win this. This is winnable. This is winnable for the first time. We can take good stock here. We could not have won the ICC race. That was never going to happen. We would not have won fucking Oldawar. It wasn't going to happen. But could we win this race? Yes. Nearly did, but such an impressive run from them. After the performances that have been put up before, people did play well. It wasn't the very, very best they played, but they played really, really well because most of the runs were up to a pretty high standard. I think the leadership of Polar is very, very strong, and I think that they can take it. I think that they will. I thought that they would take it here. I wasn't 100% sure. I'm more confident of Firelands than I was of this tier, though.
I now know.
I thought that it was. I thought my understanding, this was my thinking on this. I thought to myself, okay, I think our pacing is going to be slightly behind. So if Progress wipes and we don't, I think that we take it, and that is exactly what happened. If Progress had not wiped, we wouldn't have been able to keep their pace, even if we hadn't wiped. But because they had wiped, we pulled ahead of them.
Right. Hey, Jugs, we now know what 90 minutes of North sucking his own dick sounds like.
Like I said, this is not me sucking my own dick. I was not involved in this. I'm an analyst. I literally was just.
Well, I was going to say, what do we have to do to get you on the team, big guy?
Wait. I am.
Sorry, you're on the team, of course. You know what I mean.
I'm practicing. I'm trying to.
You still get a ring at the ceremony.
Well, no, I don't get a ring at the ceremony at all. I'm just there. I'm there to cheer on. I think that they did a fantastic job. I'm gonna say, ooh, Polar did fantastic. Precisely because I'm not sucking my own dick.
Right.
They did that without me. That was not my result. I did not put that up. I helped them the tiniest bit, and I helped make the guild for the better part of 2 years.
We get it.
That I was grateful, but it's just it's like seeing the team that you worked really, really, really hard to develop, that you still love, that you still spend a ton of time with, even if you're not actively competing on it right now, doing so well. I am so proud of them. I think that they did so well.
It's like raising a child and then told you're no longer welcome at that child's football games.
You know what? Maybe no. But
So you have to stand at least 100 feet away from the field.
I mean, there is a lot of value in having like a 26-man kind of thing.
Yeah.
As well.
Well, I was 26 man in ICC. I was 26 man in ICC because Mage was not that good on the last fight, and we were having problems with Lich King. Like, that was our biggest issue, and we were just like, okay, more RNG on the locks. Even if we think the lock is going to be a worse performer, North can sit out. He can 26 man. I was calling everything in the raids. But it is, frankly speaking, it is a lot of time, and I've been spending a ton of time just in Unreal and learning C++ and learning blueprints well, and trying to learn how to 3D model some stuff, animate stuff.
Well, I was going to say, what do we have to do to get? What do we have to do to get you on the team? What are the people above you doing that you're not doing?
The people above me doing that I'm not doing.
They're playing Rogue, man. That's what I'm saying.
Other people on the no. I could have been on the prog team if I wanted to be on the prog team.
Oh, here we go. Rightio.
And I put it if I put in the time, obviously, but I wouldn't walk into the last moment there. And if I would have been flexible and needed to play the things, I would have been beholden to the rules that everyone else was there. Right? Because a lot of those players in that roster, we had the same issue that Variable did in some situations. We just didn't have a ton of extra players. Right. Those players swapped. We'd be like, hey, you play X. You don't have a slot if you play X. Play Y. Play Z. Play a Death Knight. You play Warlock. Lovely. We don't think Warlock owns. We think Warlock's not that strong. Play Death
we actually originally had 2 rogues, and we swapped one to Unholy.
Yeah. And so, I mean, it just depends on what your players are willing to do. And we're lucky that our roster has a lot. Like, our Resto Druid can play Hunter, I think, in a lot of rosters.
Yeah. Sometimes you have like one tricks, and
you
really
will have
flexibility.
one tricks. And I'm like, to be honest, right, like, I am not the best for a raid team in that way, because I mostly only play Mage, right? Mage is almost always take one of them, but usually a lot of very, very good players end up playing Mage just because of the sheer volume of Mage players. Probably you just get you get a few diamonds here or there, and so having those players be flexible is super, super, super important. But like, if I'm healing, I only healing on Priest, and if I'm DPSing, I'm pretty much only DPSing on Mage. There are exceptions when Mage has been super, super weak, like I rerolled in TBC in like tier 6, but that was the only time that it ever actually needed to happen, and I did it because it needed to happen. And so I guess I would have probably just done the same here. I probably would have just played Warrior. It's not like it's that hard. But yeah. No, having that kind of player is super, super important, and I couldn't do that this tier, so it wouldn't have. I didn't get within 50 feet of it, except for during the PTR weekends to help them out with, like I said, just fixing weak auras and some assigns here and there, editing their cooldown sheets,
I'm going to start lovingly referring to you as the Dylan Brooks of WoW, which is an NBA cut for all you NBA heads out there. But, mate, we love you like a son. And I'll end on this note just saying, look, it's been so delightful hearing you guys chat and, have a bit of fun back and forth there between the 2 guild members. Jugs, or North, I should say this to you. You told me, and I don't think I'm speaking out of school in saying this, you told me via DM when you found out that Jugs was on the show from Variable, and you said, Variable? They're our mortal enemies, or our rivals, our nemesis. And I hope that we've mended a bit of a bridge between the 2 over the last hour and a half.
I never had an issue with Krendor. I joke about the nemesis thing because there was a bit of kind of, we viewed them, and I think that this is accurate, as the biggest competition in NA, right? They were the best guild that was competing against us, and we knew that, right? You're gonna know that. So yeah, I don't I don't hold any animosity towards anyone. I don't care about Krendor not liking me because I tried to poach him from Overclock a year ago. It doesn't mean anything to me. I don't care, right? It doesn't negatively impact me. I don't think that he's terrible or awful. I wanted him in my guild because he was a strong player, and it seemed like he was a thoughtful raider. Right? He seemed like he actively contributed a lot. So I was like, yeah, I definitely want this guy in my guild, enough to try and poach them, because you know how that can look, right? Like, I'm no stranger to how that could look. You look like a dick, right? It is what it is.
Yeah, it's always rough with the recruiting, especially when you're trying to get, you know, the better players or to fill a specific role, or if you know someone's a good player and you're really trying to fill that
And they're
hole
in
or
an A,
something.
and they're in an A, and so they're stuck in some guild that
It
they
is a
don't want to
small,
leave because that's the way that we are in an A, and that super sucks. And
yeah,
so you have to the steps that we took, and I think I was really heavily involved in this, but it would never have happened without the GM of Polar, without Team Muggsy. He had to sit there and he had to. The thing that really, really, really helped us ultimately was taking a Dwa from Overclock and putting him in our leadership. That was one of the biggest swings for Polar. He is such a strong, thoughtful, rational person. He is a gifted healer, and that never would have happened if we weren't turning every stone, right? Because we didn't think, and we still don't think, we think that we are the best chance for NA to beat the Euros because we think that we care the most.
and it's hard to. I feel like it's a fine line between like malicious, aggressive poaching versus just being like, hey, we think you're a great player. Like, how are things for you? How do you like your guild? Like, what's going
Can we make
on?
you an
We've got this
offer that
spot.
you will, that you will like? Like, can we make
Yeah,
this work? Is this
it's
going to
so
be a thing that?
difficult
Yeah,
because it's like some people take that as like, very personal, super malicious, and then in other times it's like part of doing business. So I don't know. It's tough, but
it is tough.
I never. I've been, in the classic scene since day one. Before that, I was a Mythic Raider, and like I don't know, it's just I've never really had kind of malicious things towards like other guilds. I just don't really care enough. I just like to game and do well and play with good people. So I've never really been one for the drama. I kind of stay out of that stuff.
Fair enough.
There
It's
you
very
go.
noble of you. Also the same with me. Also, I feel exactly the same. Let me
Oh,
mirror
fuck
that
off.
completely.
Bullshit. We know you better than that. North,
Let me mirror that.
it has been a
What are you talking
pleasure.
about, man?
Unfortunately, we've had to find you guilty of 34 counts of using a BM Hunter in your raid. We shall be back for sentencing on July 11, mate. It is
This is the
always...
mistrial of the century. You are a dog shit fucking judge, my friend.
Mate, what a pleasure it's been chatting to you. Look, I almost feel bad that we didn't get to talk about anything but the race to world first today. There's so much I'd love to discuss Catawise with you. How about we come back? Can we get you back in a couple of weeks doing this again, mate? We'll chat about other stuff.
Absolutely.
Sounds good. All right. Anything to plug, North? Anyone to shout out?
Yeah, I mean, Polar. They did great. If you're looking for a fantastic World of Warcraft guild, either in SOD or in Classic, Kata. You should you can reach out to me. You can reach out to, we have a Twitter. It's like Polar Guild MMO. You can just DM me. I'll North the Mage, and I'll give you an invite to the recruiting link. It's also on our Warcraft logs page, which you can find. Just go look at number 3. We're owning the space.
Very good. As Classic Go is saying, Polar? I barely know her. Look, Jugs, mate, you're going to have to one-up that plug for Polar now. You've got to do the mother of all fucking guilds advertisements for Variable.
Yeah, I mean, similar sense. Like we're also, looking for folks. I think what we were able to do in such a short amount of time is very admirable and shows that we're, taking this seriously, and not only for the rest of the Classic, but hopefully moving forward in MOP. So definitely looking to expand our numbers as we go into farm split hell. So yeah, I mean, excited for the future and looking forward to what T12 brings.
Very good. Guys, we're going to get like to all the Countdown listeners, I want like a fucking Team Aniston, Team Jolie type situation here. Write in and tell me whether you're Team Variable or Team fucking Polar, and we'll see which way people lean. Look, guys, you've been an absolute delight. I love you both. I'm going to talk to you both off stream for a couple of minutes here, and we'll say our goodbyes. Stream, thank you so much for tuning in. You guys have been brilliant. Thank you for participating in the chat. and we'll publish this one on Monday on the show. And look out, guys, on Monday, we're also launching the Countdown Podcast New Network's brand new music podcast, Best Album Ever. Very excited to get 2 hot episodes out to you, all about Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness from the Smashing Pumpkins and Van Halen 1 from Van Halen. Look, guys, it's a phenomenal show. Even if you're not even that big of a music fan, please do me a favor and give it a listen. Have faith in me. Trust me. I give good pod. It's really good stuff. I'll see you there on the launch on Monday. All right, stream. I'll catch you later.